Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In light of the tragedies that our country has experienced over the last week or so in so many different places, I wanted to just have a moment of silence for all those people who were affected in this tragic time. So thank you for that moment. The next item is acceptance of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Mike, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Just for the record, Ben Serb had a business appointment and can't be here tonight, so he's absent tonight. Approval of minutes from the regular meeting of June 5, 2019. A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. Any changes, errors, or omissions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And the same for the special meeting on July 24th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Jim? Seconded by Lou. Any changes?
Yeah, I have a change.
Okay.
Within the description of about the park, in the minutes it said that I think it said, I don't remember how the wording was, but it said the committee had decided to not put paving around the soccer fields, and that decision hasn't been made yet. Hadn't been made yet, or hasn't.
It was discussed, rather.
But it was, so it wasn't. Yep.
Did you get that, Sharon? So with that amendment, is there approval of the minutes as so amended? We'll withdraw the other motion.
Oh, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you want me to just withdraw the original motion? You want to withdraw your second?
I'll second.
And then I'll just make a motion that we approve the July 24th, 2019 minutes as amended.
And I'll second that.
Seconded by Lou. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Under correspondence, as I mentioned earlier, our State Senator Norm Needleman will be here. He is coming from another meeting, so I said when he got here we would put him on. And do I see him? There he is. Perfect timing. Hi, Norm.
You know.
You're.
One board of selectmen meeting to another.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. We'd love to let you settle in a little bit, and then we're going to put you right on. You're first on the agenda. Is there any public comment tonight? And so we will have Senator Needleman give us an update on the State Senate and your work.
Oh, I get to speak
Yes,
at
you
the
get to speak at the
microphone.
microphone, and you are going to be recorded.
Oh, my Lord, oh, my. Yeah.
First of all, welcome. And I think you know all of the selectmen and probably know many of the people in the audience. If you want to just go around the room, we'll start with Rick Sharp,
Rick Shar. Mike Felton. Lou Pear.
Sue Bransfield,
Jim Tripp?
Ralph Zampano.
and if the audience wants to identify themselves, Joe?
Joseph Denninger.
Here from the library group, Jan Novick,
Jake Brown.
Margot Chapman.
Hello.
And you know the gentleman in front.
Yeah, I think so.
And across the back.
Tom Robinson, Director of Finance.
Bob Shea, Director of Public Works.
Don Golan, Emergency Management.
And Sharon Hoy is our recording secretary. So,
Director-
welcome. Turn it over to you.
Director of Finance wears a dark suit. I like that. Not passing on bad information tonight. I had some happy news from my Director of Finance tonight. We ran a significantly larger surplus than we thought. which was good news. She never, as of May, we were breaking even. I don't know how in the end of June we had a big surplus, but she plays that pretty close to the vest, and I prefer that. Anyway, I'm grateful to be here, and thank you all. I don't have a lot to say. I like to come and listen. I'm happy to explain what I do up at the Senate. I got elected last year, and senators on day one become chairman of committees. I didn't know my way around the building at all. I had to learn where all the landmarks were, and at my age, the landmarks are the obvious. But because I had, as a first selectman, which I still am, had a lot of interactions with Eversource, not necessarily 100% favorable. The president of the Senate and the majority leader thought it would be good to give me the chairmanship of the Energy Committee. So I'm the chairman of the Energy Committee. Because I have a business background, I'm the vice chair of the Banking Committee. I'm on the Finance Committee. I'm on the Commerce Committee because of my business background, and I'm on Transportation Committee. So it's like a heavy agenda. It's very different when you walk in as a senator. You have a lot to learn and a lot to do, and not a lot of time to do it. So I did my best. I think that on the Energy Committee, which is the focus of of my activity, that and a lot on the Finance Committee, where the chair kind of called on me a lot to help with things that were related to business, because they don't have a lot of business people either in the Democratic caucus, or I don't think anybody in the legislature started and built a manufacturing company like I did, and there are very few people that had the first selectman experience. So that's what I spent a lot of time on. And on the Energy Committee, I was committed for a whole bunch of reasons to working in a completely nonpartisan way. It turns out that the ranking member, the Republican ranking member on the Energy Committee on the Senate side, is Paul Formica. Paul and I have been friends for over 30 years, and that made it a little bit easier to not sort of stake out partisan positions. And frankly, energy is not a partisan issue. There are not a lot of people in the Connecticut legislature that argue much about climate change, so there's a big push for renewable energy, but everybody is also concerned about the move to renewable energy and managing the ratepayer impact of that, because it's not cheaper than the cheapest form of energy that you can generate, which is, in Connecticut, it's natural gas. We don't burn coal here, which is a good thing, but we do a lot of gas energy. And learning about my battles with Eversource were, getting the power back on after a storm and how they manage that. But grid level energy management is much more complicated, and I'm sort of at the tip of the iceberg of learning about it. But I think at the end of the day, what we did was we renewed the renewable tariffs on a temporary basis for solar, so solar can expand while we figure out what the tariff should be. So we decline the subsidy as the energy from solar gets more efficient. And the same thing with wind energy. We had a huge procurement of 2,000 megawatts of wind, and that will be enough over the next 10 years to replace the output of Millstone when it goes offline. There was a brewing big problem with Dominion Energy that got solved 2 years ago, but didn't finally have the I's dotted and T's crossed until in February sometime, with Dominion threatening to close that plant. And unfortunately, the state allowed its back to be pushed up against the wall, because one thing, nuclear, like it or not, is carbon free. And that plant is aging, and it's aging out of its lifespan. But it also represents 40% of the energy, baseload energy, that we consume in Connecticut. So without it, we were really up the creek. So the governor negotiated that. I think a good 10-year or 12-year rate agreement, and that gives us enough time to get more renewable online to replace it, because the state a long time ago adopted carbon reduction standards and renewable energy standards that they want to meet. So we did those two things on the energy side, and we did a bunch of other things that I'm very proud of. All of our bills passed unanimously, and out of both chambers, and might have been, shouldn't say unanimous, there might have been one or two dissenting votes in one of the houses, but virtually unanimously. And I'm proud of that. And beyond that, a lot of publicity around the budget itself. The budget actually balanced. There was a lot of good things in the budget. They're trying to take care of the pensions. For like them or not, Dan Malloy was one of the first governors to actually try to fund the pensions after years and years of neglect. And the truth about the Connecticut budget is there's no quick fix. From a business point of view, and I'm sure from a finance point of view, you would like to have 10-year projections to see when do we actually get out of the nightmare. But the state doesn't necessarily operate that way. They work in 2-year increments because that's how often people get elected. And I don't like that. I don't think it's the right way for the state to operate. So I keep pressing that we need to do 10-year plans. There were a bunch of hot button issues. Tolls was certainly one of them. And there were minimum wage. We raised the minimum wage over 4.5 years to $15 an hour. I supported that. I would have preferred that they did it over a longer period of time, but that was the best that I could personally negotiate to. And I support paid family and medical leave, although I wasn't 100% supportive of the bill that got passed. So I'm hoping that we can go back next session and improve that. Next year, next session, my focus is going to be on the Energy Committee coming up with a plan to find a way to reduce rates or manage rates in the state of Connecticut. We can no longer function from the point of view of residents and businesses being the most expensive state for energy. I mean, it's just not acceptable. It got that way over a long period of time. The energy companies have their own explanations for how we got here. And part of it is we don't burn coal, which is the cheapest form of energy. But the spread between the wholesale price of energy and what the ratepayers pay is too much. And I just think that we need to figure out a way. I personally, looking back on it, don't think deregulation was the best thing. I don't think we can put that cat back in the bag. But I think that that anytime I see a business that has hedge funds in the middle of it, I get concerned that there's a lot of profit being made at the expense of the ratepayers. So that's one of my missions, budget sanity. I think that we have some major things we need to deal with. I have a personal antipathy to the Transfer Act in the state of Connecticut. I think that anybody who owns real estate in the state suffers from that. Anybody who owns commercial real estate, it's a very unfriendly law for businesses. So there's a bunch of things that I'm going to work on. But other than that, I'm here to take questions.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay.
We'll start with the Selectmen. Are there any questions?
I'll start.
No.
Yeah, one.
Rick?
Seeing your, like one of our energy gurus.
Oh, don't say
talking
that.
about.
Tip of the
Anyway,
iceberg.
Just curious, how come I don't see as many like solar farms, for instance, on renewables here in Connecticut as I do when I drive up through Massachusetts or Vermont, and what's the reasoning behind it, and is there any plan to increase that?
So one of my pet peeves, and I don't ascribe to the idea that legislators should put in an enormous number of bills. Every legislator puts in bills, and I don't fault them for it, but if they have a pet issue, they'll do a bill. And some people put in 70 or 80 or 90 bills. I mean, there were 4,500 bills proposed this year, and probably 400 that were passed. So I'm not somebody who ascribes to doing that, but one of the things that really bothered me, I was driving up and back to Massachusetts. A friend was being treated at Mass General, and I would meet him up there. And you see all the solar arrays on the sides of highways. So I kept asking, why is this? Why don't we have that? And well, the DOT and this. And I said, that's not acceptable. So I put in a bill that we investigate that. And that's now part of the green economy bill that we passed, where we extended the solar tariffs for a while and studying not just on the sides of highway, but why are we not using public land that's not used, that's suitable for renewable energy? It should be. And so I agree. The issues around solar are complicated. The more solar you do, the more expensive it is for the ratepayer. So we have to keep subsidizing it until the rate comes down. But there are a couple of things about solar that complicate it. Wind and solar are not what they call baseload power, where you generate electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nuclear is the perfect baseload. A gas-fired power plant generates electricity. They turn it on and they run it, and it generates a certain amount of kilowatts every day, every minute of every day. Wind works when the wind is blowing. Solar works when the sun is out. The price of energy storage, batteries or the like, still pretty high, although that's an area where we need to incentivize more innovation at a national level and probably a global level, because that makes solar practical. The other thing about solar is, where do you put it? The most open space in Connecticut is farmland, but there's a big battle about using solar on farmland. And I can tell you that one of the things you don't do with solar is you don't cut down a forest to put a solar farm, because you're sort of defeating the purpose of absorbing the CO2. So so they work on it. There's something called virtual net metering, which is what municipalities use to put solar arrays out there, where you can buy renewable energy credits and have solar arrays in your town that generate renewable energy. We doubled the amount that can be done. So we did do that, and I'm hopeful that DEP and DOT and UConn, the Connecticut State Universities, will see fit to start allowing more of it on state land, because that's really important. The other big thing that we passed in the last 35 seconds of the session was a big 5G bill, because 5G is the next wave in cellular mobile communications, and to put it in proper frame of reference, the movie that now takes you 2 to 3 minutes to download, not that that's the end of the world, it will be 2 seconds, because it's 100 times faster. And I don't think most people care about how long it takes to download that movie, but the reality is 5G will make autonomous vehicles possible. It's necessary for automation, and it's really a groundbreaking thing. So what we did was we passed the bill to allow 5G on public lands, which is the first time they've actually done that. UConn needs it. We need to do it along the highways, along the rail lines. So DOT, DEEP, and State University property now have a process by which 5G can be placed on that property.
Yeah,
Which
that's good.
that was, I'm telling you, the last 15 seconds. It was unnerving. But
Thank
we're
you.
working on it.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure. Boo.
I'll ask the toll question.
No, don't.
That was going to be my second question.
You only get one question.
I know, I didn't know.
We think alike. Is it just a partisan issue, or is it a situation where people don't understand that if we toll people on the roads, that 60% of the funding will come from taxpayers from Connecticut. 40% of that money will come from people that are outside of Connecticut. If we go with the other plan, where we get a credit card and we bond everything, we then have to pay interest on the bond.
Right,
And 100% of that bond and interest is paid by
Connecticut.
the taxpayers of Connecticut. So I can't understand, unless it's just a partisan issue, and I do understand that there are some people that could be hurt by it.
Right.
But there are plans to address that.
So it became a partisan issue, and I swear it's one of those things that if it had been messaged better, it would not have been. I think that it's something that if the party not in power and the party in power have a difference of opinion, the party not in power, and the Democrats would do the same thing. They would look to message to prove that their ideas were no good and they had the better idea. I think this is one of those areas where it became a partisan issue, and I don't think that the governor messaged it properly, although I think the idea is the right idea. However, I think it's also a regional issue. It's where you live and how you commute. And I think that those people, it fell down, not every Democrat was in favor of it. The entire Danbury delegation was opposed to it because you can't go anywhere in Danbury without getting on a highway. So I think it needed a little more thought. I think it needs better messaging. I think we need to make sure we make provisions for low-income people. I think we need to discount Connecticut residents as much as we legally can. To not lose federal transportation dollars, we absolutely have to come up with a plan that the federal government approves. But I'm all about pay-go and bonding less. The numbers are telling, for every $1 million in transportation projects that you do, Connecticut residents pay $600,000, but if you bond them, they pay $1.5 million. So you get 2.5 times the work done, you don't leave debt, and it's already enough debt for the next generation. But I think it has to be thought out a little more clearly. I think that people need to have a visual on the big parts of the projects that need to be done, that can't be funded through bonding or more on the gas tax. I just think that there's got to be a better explanation and more justification. Part of the problem, Lou, in my opinion, is that today, and it's not only in Connecticut, we work hard as select people to instill trust in our residents. And they still, sometimes ascribe negative motives to what we do. But we are so close in contact with our residents that we can talk to them at levels of government above local government. There's an absolute lack of trust, and Connecticut has not earned the trust of its residents because of the way our Constitution is written, the desperate straits that we're in financially. So money that gets earmarked for something, you do a passport to park thing, and then there's talk of sweeping it into the general fund. The fact in the Connecticut Constitution is that there are no earmarks. You can say it's going to be for something and make every effort to do that and hopefully live up to your word, but in desperate times, they're going to try to balance the budget any way they can. Constitutionally, anything that is designated, the minute it hits the general fund, you can't do anything with it. But before it hits the general fund, it can make a U-turn and go somewhere else. So again, I think to rebuild trust, the national level, it's much worse. But to rebuild trust, we absolutely need to demonstrate a pattern of behavior that engenders trust. And I don't think that we've done that. And honestly, that's the job of every legislator and every executive branch member in the Connecticut state government. It's one of the reasons I ran. I think that if we don't recognize the lack of trust and the need to rebuild it, we're never going to get anywhere, because you're going to have 40, 45, 50% of the population that says, I don't believe that. You're not going to use the money for that. If I only believed that that's where it was going to go, I would absolutely support it, and I don't blame them.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience have a question for Norm? Okay. Okay, well, I know you and Christy Carpino are having open hours on
We are.
Monday. Is it Monday the 12th?
Monday the 12th.
Here, I think, again.
Yeah,
So another opportunity if people want to come and meet with Norm, as well as our state representative Christy Carpino. They're appearing together here, which I think is wonderful. It's nice to
great,
meet both.
and easy to get in touch with me. My name is Norm Needleman. It's norm.needleman@cga.ct.gov. I make every effort to respond to emails myself. Even when it's not possible, you can get a response from me at 3 o'clock in the morning that may not be English, but I'm trying.
Well, thank you very much. We hope
Thank
you
you.
come back again soon. Nice job. And I hope you don't get too wet out there. I don't know what the weather is. Oh, we remembered that one time we got flooded. Yes. Yeah, that was horrible.
I got the picture if you want it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was horrible. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
both
you.
for
Good
coming.
night.
Take
Thanks
care.
for coming.
Good night. Monthly budget report. Tom?
So just start of the new year. So we have the expenditures in front of you here. We gave you the revenue report. This time of the year, it's usually a decent time of year because new start and first month. So hopefully things are going as we had planned so far, and are working out on the expense side. So you'll have the current month's activity there for you. If you have any questions, you can look over. And then from revenue standpoint, which is the last few pages, taxes came in pretty good for the first half, for the first month, and state really hasn't made any payments yet on their components. So it's just been a little bit of usage and revenues generated from building permits and town clerk fees and the like. We did get Kerma paid their annual kind of annual at this point, but it's a distribution that we are unaware of until it comes out. And this year they provided us around $34,610. So that's when when they perform well enough that they can give back reserves to their members. This is an allocation, so it's a nice program, and this was a nice amount of money. We were kind of budgeted 20,000, anticipating usually something there. Huh?
What page are you on?
This is the very last page of the packet. So it would be page, it's the item for 354. It's about halfway down there. We budgeted 20,000. We received $34,610.
So what was that from?
That's from Kerma for
Oh.
the distribution. So this Kerma makes more or less monies, and at some level they return their excess to their members, and that's voted upon by the Kerma board. So the page one there, that kind of shows you the activity, the flip one page back there from we were on page 2, shows you the activity for the current month, the first couple accounts there in revenue, and then you'll see a little bit there for structural permanent activity, about 3/4 to the way down. So the first month is moving along, and we're into the year, so that's about what I have on that for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to number 8, if that's okay with everyone. No further questions on that? Thank you, Tom. The library renovation grant project, and we do have some members. The chairwoman is here, along with other members of the library board and our library director. I know that one of the questions that you're back to find out about is the sealing of the floor before you actually put the carpet down on the major improvement project that the board has so graciously entered into. And I would like to suggest, and then we'll bring it up for conversation with the selectmen, that the selectmen assume the cost associated with the sealing of the floor, in that the floor in this building, we know emanates quite a bit of moisture. And the building's about 40 years old, is that right, Janet? 37. And when they put the flooring in, my understanding is there was a thin coat that went to seal the floor, and then the carpet went on top. And over the years, that has degraded, and the need for us to maintain this building and to reduce the amount of moisture, which then hopefully will improve the energy usage in this building. We won't have to heat so much in the summer and dehumidify so much the rest of the year as well. This sealant, which is like an epoxy, will seal the floor before the carpet is put down. So when the bid goes out, as I understand it, through Public Works Office, I was told that it will be an ad alternate in the bid, and we will know how those bids come in once it goes out. So that would be my suggestion. Let's get the project out to bid so we can find out the best number that we can to proceed with this project, which is quite a large percentage is grant funded through the state of Connecticut. Quite a large percentage is then paid for by the endowment fund, which the library benefactors and people have donated to over the years, and through skillful investment through our finance advisor, our finance department, and the board has done quite well. So with the addition of us assuming the cost of that epoxy, I think we should be in pretty good shape, but we won't know till those bids come in. So I'll open up to the selectmen to see if there's any further discussion. Ralph?
Yeah, I certainly would like to see the bids, because it is, from our experience with the park, it's interesting what comes back. So I certainly support for us to be putting some funds to make sure that happens. It's critical. Okay.
Wow.
Norm Needleman was just here and talking about energy, so we no, it's okay, he's gone.
He's gone
It's
now.
good to see people.
I think it's critical. We certainly have talked about the strain that it's put on the systems in the building, so I'd like to see that happen. Certainly hope that the bids come in favorable, as we were fortunate with our park. I hope we are fortunate on our library.
I'd like to just comment on what my colleague has mentioned. The library is used so well. When you drive into this parking lot, you see a full parking lot, day and night. So it's used well, it's appreciated, and we appreciate the hard work that the board and the staff do here. It's a wonderful place to come, and it's a wonderful environment for us to have in the town of Portland. So I think we're all in agreement that we need to fix the floor, and we need to have that done. We'll go out to bid, and that will give us an idea of how much it's going to cost. But I think the project should move forward, and this is a great library, and we would like to save some electricity. Hopefully that will do the trick while we're sealing it and then putting the new carpeting in. So I just speak as one member of the Board of Selectmen, but I think we all feel the same way.
Rick?
I second that, Lou. Well said.
Very well said. Margot, or, excuse me.
No, I was just
Jeff?
gonna say that, I agree. I think it's our obligation in terms of structurally with the building to do that. It's gonna be better for the books. I don't think it's really quantifiable, but I think we are gonna save some energy, so we know there's gonna be an offset for that investment. And I think by positioning it this way and doing it as part of the bid as an add-on, that's gonna give us the best price, because it'll ultimately be done as part of a larger project, so I think it's a smart way for us to go.
Margot, do you have any comments, or other board members?
So I just want to thank the board for their support, and, we're looking forward to getting this project going, because I think you're going to be very pleased when you see everything that's going to be done in all of it.
Janet? Think Janet?
I agree.
Okay, Jay, you all set? And Laurel?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you to all of those who support our wonderful library, both today and in past, because the accumulation of the dollars in that endowment fund means you can make these really wonderful improvements for everybody in the town. So thank you to the board, and we'll look forward to hearing how those bids come in. Okay, then we're going to move on, if everybody's ready for the next item, which is a follow-up to something we talked about last time, and that is the proposed food truck ordinance. And Mary Dickerson is here to give us some information, and I invited Joe Diniger to come, who is a licensed vendor in our Chatham Health District, and he has provided some service to our town as well, along with Sharon Paddock. So, but we'll first hear from Mary.
So what I gave you was a memo that just lists some of the ways that towns charge for vendor fees. There aren't a lot of towns our size that have either ordinances that relate to food trucks or a policy to charge for them. So I started with the most expensive municipality down to the cheapest, and it's not everyone, but they're representative of how often those fees occur. At the bottom of the page are some of the more, I guess you could say, creative ways of instituting a fee. So it's just another example. A lot of them look at an application fee, which covers the town's cost of processing. They're not looking at really making any money off of it. And then they charge an operating fee either per month or annually. And then the town of Enfield looks at where the registered vendor comes from. So if they're from the town of Enfield and Enfield is receiving taxes from the vehicle, then Enfield waives the annual fee and just charges a daily permit fee for use of space. So I think it just gives you a kind of an idea of the different ways that towns are charging for this as you decide on how to set up a structure. The only other one is Madison. So Madison has areas in town that they designate as being allowed for food trucks to vend, and it is on town property. So there's an annual $500 parking fee that's charged on top of the food license. So the license is charged by the class. Whatever their health district determines as the class determines the fee. If it's something like, and I think this counts for those that are closer to the beach too. If you're just selling prepackaged ice cream, the fee is $50. You're a class 1 vendor. If you're a class 4 vendor that's actually doing preparation of food, then it's higher and it's $150. So it goes from things as simple as just a flat fee to something that puts a little more thought into where the vendor originates and how it hits the town. So now my other hat, which is economic development, I think we have to be very careful and we have to be very respectful of our existing restaurants. So as we move into this, we have a number of restaurants here in town that are extremely generous, both with their time and with their donations to different groups. And whatever you choose to do, however you choose to move forward, I think we have to be very protective of them. There's a huge upfront investment for somebody to open a restaurant. So it's not just the location and the kitchen, but the requirements from the state and the requirements from the Chatham Health District can be arduous. The number of sinks that are required, the type of dishwashers that are required, oil and grease separators for items that go into our sanitary sewer. All of these things cost money, as well as annual inspection fees. And then you have the liability insurance that they have to pay because they have customers in and out. They provide tables and chairs. They provide for trash pickup. They provide public bathrooms. So we're not really creating a level playing field when we establish just an application or an annual fee and allow someone to take business away from somebody that's made a big investment in our town. And then the other side of that is personal property tax. So many of our restaurants are owned by the owner of the restaurant, so they are not renters. So they're paying property tax and they're also paying personal property tax on that equipment. I've seen estimates come in for the new kitchens at upwards of $400,000. So that's a significant amount of money that we're receiving personal property tax on when you figure we have buildings in our industrial park that are assessed at $250,000 and we take 70% of that. The depreciated value of that kitchen equipment, the same thing, we take a depreciated value, but you're starting out at really the value of a building just for the equipment that's in the kitchen, refrigerators, freezers, oil and grease separators. So I just want you, when you're looking at this, to be aware of the investment that these other businesses that have made into our community, and that they continue to financially make every year, and that we don't do anything that's going to be detrimental to them. Anybody have any questions?
Rick, you look like you have a question.
Is there, in your mind, have you ever considered any limit on the number of these food vendor or food truck vendor permits we would give out?
So I know Michelle has done some research and looked at what other towns have done, and the biggest thing they do is they do this 500-foot limit, so they don't allow a food truck to be within 500 feet. I think if we require a sponsoring property where a business can have, so you may have a business that wants to have an ice cream truck. An ice cream truck can't just pull up on the street and park in front of the police station and sell ice cream. I think if you allowed another business to be a sponsor for that business, then you're really leveling the playing field for our restaurants, because that sponsoring business has to provide all the same things. So they have to provide bathrooms, they have to provide trash receptacles. So before we make that decision that we're just going to allow them to show up on private property, and my fear is we take things like, there's a lot on the other side of St. Mary's Cemetery on Route 66. So I don't want somebody to be able to contract with the owner of a vacant lot and put a food truck in, because that would put them in direct competition with Farrell's. So they can bring that food truck in and just come for lunchtime and then leave. And they're taking business away from Farrell's, and what are we getting out of that? You know, a $200 or a $500 annual fee. So I think we have to be very careful with private property, and when you look at the number of vacant parcels that we have along Route 66 between Main Street and Cobalt, we could potentially have property owners who aren't making any money off their vacant lot leasing that space to a food truck. So that's kind of where the concern lies. We've talked about having another business, we talked about with our brewery regulation, sponsor that food truck. So they would not put in a kitchen, but they would be the sponsor, and they would take on the liability insurance, they would take on the trash, they would take on parking, traffic concerns, bathrooms, all of the other amenities that are provided by our restaurants would be provided by that sponsoring business. That levels the playing field in some sense. We have to be very careful about making sure that we're just not allowing, in a sense, roving food trucks, because we're allowing anyone with a parcel of land in a commercial zone to allow to contract with someone.
So
Well, that's
do
what I was getting at. So I guess, so you're saying a sponsoring business, really, not necessarily.
Well, I think you have to have the
property.
services that a restaurant provides. So if you don't have trash receptacles and you don't have trash service, how do you enforce that the trash gets taken out every day? And that has historically, this has been tried numerous times, going back to Continental Can and Standard Nap and the businesses down in the industrial park that used to have the food trucks that came in for breakfast and for lunch. The problem becomes trash. So, and it's not just the food truck, but people that are eating from the food truck will walk away and they throw things away where they happen to be. Grease traps, things like that. How are they going to empty their wastewater? Where are they going to empty their wastewater? So all of these things become concerns. When you have a sponsoring business that has either a site plan approval or a special permit approval, then those concerns are eliminated, because that business that is sponsoring them becomes responsible for trash and parking and amenities for the customers, bathrooms. And so I think that way we're protective of our businesses, but we also allow them a place to vend.
Do any of these other towns have that set up right now?
Any town that has a brewery ordinance or a brewery zoning reg that allows food trucks on those properties has that type of a setup.
So they have the sponsoring business set. At least that's how.
So the the brewery or the winery would contract with a vendor to come in, and that vendor would be able to sell on that property to the customers that come, and they don't necessarily have to be winery and brewery customers,
Because
but
it's complimentary, they don't have a kitchen there, they
Yep.
have food out there, it kind of messes it.
and it allows them to change the offerings that they have, but then at the same time, it protects the municipality and the other businesses because there is a responsible party for cleanup, there is a responsible party for trash, there is a responsible party for anything that a normal restaurant would have to have.
Right, right. What have some of the other towns done? Because I'm sure there are other towns that have the same concerns. They don't want to, put some pressure on their own businesses. How do they handle it? Do they limit it to distance? Like, what's the practice?
So I spoke at length with Tom Morano, who's the Economic Development Director in Middletown, and they had a real concern because of Wesleyan.
Right.
So the food trucks would come into Wesleyan, and then trash became a problem. So they have really clamped down on what they call roving food trucks. They want them to be in a specific location.
Anchor somewhere so they know
Yep.
what it is. Yep.
And we've done that here. So we have had them at the Riverfront Park. We've had someone now down under the bridge, and the town is the sponsor for that location. So it is the town's responsibility to ensure that that location maintains cleanliness, that trash is taken away. But when you're just giving a permit to somebody that has an agreement for a location, and that's essentially an absentee landlord, there's no building, there's no bathrooms, there's no parking area, that's where you're going to have problems. And that's the same thing as vending on the street.
Right now, the permits are issued by the First Selectman's office. So they have to come into my office in order to get a permit. So there's been special events. Sometimes people have special parties or special major events that they have, like car shows and things of that nature. So we'll issue a one-day permit for that. I've tried the other years to have a vendor at the riverfront area. It didn't work out too well. That person wasn't making any money and it just didn't work out, so he left. More recently at the concerts, Shiny Do Right comes. He has a permit to be there at the concerts. He's the only one. We've chosen to only issue one permit at a time per event. And then Joe Diniger and Sharon have their truck down under the bridge near to the industrial park. It's much more than 500 feet from any
Mhm.
restaurant. And it's been, I think, mildly successful. The situation is, if they're going to continue there, it can't be a month at a time. They'd like to have an opportunity to be there maybe for a year
Are they
at
on
a time.
town land?
Yes,
Oh.
town land. That's town land. And they would also need to secure electricity, which is something they would have to pay for. So it's been a convenience for some of the people who work in that area, and it's also, I think, over time, maybe that's a good place to have a permanent restaurant at some point. Who knows? It gives an opportunity for us to kind of test the waters as far as bringing people into town and having them enjoy some food.
So I have a couple questions. The first one would be, I agree those seem to be working out very well, and I'm glad to hear that they're working well. I guess the question I would have is our ordinance that we have in place secure enough in verbiage that we're going to be able to continue to operate in that manner, and we're not going to have Joe Smith come forward and say, well, this guy owns this piece of property and I want to put a truck there. I mean, we're going to be able to control that just from a standpoint of ordinance. I know we've been doing it at this point so far. That's how we've been controlling it tightly, and where we give licensing. But could we be challenged on that licensing would be my question. That would be the only thing I'd be a little concerned about.
And I think you have to establish an interpretation of your ordinance. In the past, any kind of special event has been allowed to have food trucks. We've had grand openings for businesses, and they have been allowed to have food trucks at their grand openings. So I think that's up to you to make that determination and to establish what your interpretation is. The regulations that we have for planning and zoning would be part of either a special permit or a site plan approval. And so if someone came in and their plan of business included utilizing a food truck or having a food truck on site, planning and zoning would require in either that site plan or that special permit to see where that truck would be parked, and they would require that. They would have to know where the electric hookup was. They would have to know where their clean water hookup was, trash, where the trash receptacles are going to be, where the dumpster is going to be kept. And then if that vehicle that they're vending from removes parking places that are part of their required traffic count, where are they going to make up those parking spaces? And then what's the accessibility for bathrooms? If it's something like an industrial business, they may be willing to let people from the outside use, say, public restroom in the reception area. Other businesses may not. So that's something that's going to come before planning and zoning. If they put out a site plan to be approved, they're going to look at all these things, and they may require, if they want that food truck on site, they may have to let whoever comes as a customer of that food truck use the restroom. So those are all things that would be worked out through planning and zoning, but what the Board of Selectmen, I think, needs to establish is how that ordinance is interpreted that you currently have, because it does allow for festivals and special events on town property, but traditionally we have allowed for festivals and special events that are owned by private businesses and private residents.
And we don't charge the fair when the Portland Fair occurs. That's been an agreement that we don't charge them the permit fees. The Fair Association themselves monitor who comes to that event.
They do pay Chatham Health District fees, though.
Yes.
So they do have to come into the town hall and file with Chatham Health and have a Chatham Health District inspection. It's just the town fee for vending is waived.
So the other question I have, I'm trying to understand, obviously, we had the discussion at the last meeting and talked about it. Talked about how it typically works is you might have, like what a brewery might have, certain trucks that come through on some, maybe on a schedule, maybe not on a schedule. They show up once or whatever. What I'm trying to understand from that standpoint is looking at your memo here, is that obviously all of these towns have certain pricing that they have in terms of issuing the right for them to do that. How does that work if I'm a food truck owner? I'm going to be on this traveling circuit here. But I know that in these, these are annual fees. I mean, you're not going to sit here and go, I have to now, if I was going to go to these first 7 cities on some schedule, that means I'm going to have to pay these fees then.
And so if you look at a municipality like Stamford that's charging $847 for an annual permit, there's a reason they can get that kind of money. And that's because they have the population concentration for those food trucks to make enough to have it be worth paying probably $1,500 to $1,800 a year between their health department permit and their registration permit. But you're correct. So if somebody's coming here, they may only be doing, we'll say, 4 weekends at an event. Are they going to want to pay the town of Portland $500 to be able to be here for what's essentially 8 days? And that's why I included some of the others at the bottom, the way other towns have done that to be able to work around that. And Enfield actually has what they call a half-day schedule. You either vend for lunch or dinner. So you can pick the morning and you can vend from, I think it's 10 to 2, or you can vend from 2 to 7. And so the way they do that is you pay, depending on whether you're an Enfield resident or not, you pay either $10 for that time period or you pay $20 for that time period. It makes the record keeping a little more difficult in that you have to have a schedule. But at the same time, a lot of these breweries and restaurants and businesses that run these special events know that they run a 3-day event in the fall. Or if it's a brewery, they really only use the food vehicles from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they're going to schedule out somebody and make sure they have somebody 3 to 6 months in advance. So they're going to come in, and when they pull the permit, they may pull the permit for the 3rd and 4th weekend in September and the 3rd and 4th weekend in October. So I think it's something you have to look at when you structure your permit. We want to be an attractive town for them to come to because they're going to be using other businesses while you're here. But at the same time, you don't want to freely give away your space when we have restaurants in town that are paying handsomely, both in property and personal property tax, to be here.
I have a question. So you said when one of these food truck vendors is parked, that there's supposed to be restroom facilities and trash?
They do not, so some towns require it and some towns do not. Towns that have vending districts are bigger and often have public restroom facilities. So when you go to some of the cities, there are buildings and the entrances to those buildings have public lobbies and there's public restrooms. We're not that kind of town.
Well, that's where I was going. I was there like.
And that's where I
are
think
we gonna
having a sponsoring business eliminates the problems that you wouldn't have in a city. A city is, whether you choose to go to a hotel or you go to a public library, there's public bathrooms throughout the area. So somebody like Stamford or Hartford or even downtown New Britain is very different from Portland or Colchester or East Hampton. We just do not have the type of public facilities to support somebody vending on the street. We don't have a place for people to wash their hands. We have public restrooms at the riverfront, so it works out well on concert night that there's public restrooms available. When those restrooms are locked, it would be very difficult for somebody to take a family down there and want to go in and wash their hands. There are no public restrooms.
So how does it work right now with Top Dog? Or are they just grandfathered?
Top Dog is grandfathered. I think this is their 37th year, and their permit is with the state of Connecticut because they are on state of Connecticut land. And so that they are grandfathered into that location. When they give up that permit, I doubt that it would be renewed even through the Chatham Health District because there is no running water there, and so it becomes an issue. If you notice, they have outdoor seating but no tables. And so they cannot provide tables because if you provide tables, you need to provide bathrooms.
Yeah.
So that's why they just have chairs with umbrellas occasionally. And so really is intended to be a place to pick up your food and leave. But they are grandfathered, so the rules that they abide by don't exist anymore.
Okay. Got it.
I invited Joe to come and give a few comments if you'd like, Joe. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you.
Do we have any for anybody else? Okay, Susan, Board of Selectmen, Mary, any other people that are here, thank you very much for this opportunity. Gosh, there's a lot to talk about. I want to try to keep it really simple and cohesive. First thing, we've distributed, forgive me for advertising, we've distributed our food trucks menu. Okay, you'll see that for what you might think a food truck is, which some people think is just somebody that's driving up this street and down the next selling sandwiches or something. We're not that food truck. Okay, we are a 24-foot long by 8 foot wide by 8 foot high enclosed trailer. Has everything, virtually everything a restaurant would have that it utilizes to prepare food. We have onboard refrigeration, freezer, onboard hot water, pressurized on-demand system, hot and cold running potable water, and retention tanks. The next thing, what I want to tell you about, really, let me go to the packet because there are a lot of things that I'm going to hit on, and so maybe you want to just, as we go through the segments, maybe if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Because after all, we've been doing this business for 7 years in the greater Middlesex County area, and we've traveled outside of Middlesex County for events, and we're looking for various other venues, and it is my intention eventually to franchise this business. So once again, I used to tell people, and they started, "Oh, you got a hot dog truck." I said, "This ain't your uncle's hot dog truck." And everybody that comes on board, "Oh, I can make a Philly cheesesteak." They want to work on a food truck. I can make you can't make our Philly cheesesteak, So there's a lot that goes into this kind of business, and I appreciate that Mary mentioned that restaurants have a sizable investment in their equipment. So do we. Okay. First thing I'd like to do is dispel a little myth about taxes. Okay. I've listed from public information from the town hall. I've listed some information here on various restaurants and mobile food vendors. And the thing is that mobile food people do pay taxes. For instance, on my trailer, I register it as a motor vehicle. I pay motor vehicle tax on it. Then I also file with the grand list. Depends on, you have to be, so my last grand list was in Middletown, and I haven't worked aside from this one past month in Portland, and I will be issuing a tax statement for the town of Portland to be on that grand list, if we go forward. But in various other restaurants in town, I've created a ratio. Now, I don't know of anybody that uses this ratio. I don't know anybody that might know what it really means. But I'm going to offer it to you as what I call an efficiency rating ratio. Okay? So I look at the first one would be Farrell's Restaurant. It has 66 square feet of space. Their business, this is merely the business property tax segment. This is not their physical address property tax. This is their business tax that they pay. Their assessment is $22,700. If I divide dollars by square foot, I come up with $3.31 per square foot. If I move to Sarah's, it's a small place. I had to sort of eyeball it and kind of get an idea. I come up with, because the numbers didn't jive that I saw in the town, but it's a rather small place, about 800 square feet, and they have 2980 for an efficiency rating here of 3.73. Malili's, follow across, 2.88. So we're talking about your fixed restaurants pay about $3 per square foot in terms of their business tax. Portland Restaurant, 1.85. Now, moving on to mobile food. Top Dog has it's about an 8 by 10 trailer, right? So it's about 80 square feet. $400 is what their declaration is. That's $5 per square foot efficiency rating. That means they spend, for taxes, for property taxes, they spend $5 a square foot, more than fixed restaurants. Look at Shiny Do-Right. He's paying 11.88. That's almost $12 per square foot. True, our mobile food business buildings on wheels are small postage stamp pieces of property as opposed to a big restaurant. We have to be very efficient about how we use our space, which means we spend more dollars per square foot given to the town in property tax than fixed restaurants. Okay? They may have bigger numbers because they have bigger space, but we're the guys that pay the bigger portion. Mustard Dogs, 192 square feet. Giving a rough estimate that my declaration when filed in October might be around $27.50, that's $14 a square foot. Right? I'm very proud of my truck, my trailer, right? And I'm happy to pay what it takes to do business, right? But I would like people to acknowledge when they bring up this thing that we take away from fixed restaurants. No, we don't. And we pay a little bit more for our space. Okay? In conclusion, is that mobile food entities contribute significantly to the tax base where they provide service and should be endorsed and accepted in those communities as productive members of the economic flora. I'll take any questions on that issue. If anybody has any questions at this time. Okay. So moving forward.
Well.
Yes, sir.
Question, comment. But these fixed restaurants also pay a significant amount of tax on the land and their building. I believe your business property tax assessment number, like the 22,000 for Farrell's, is you're talking about the tax they pay on their equipment, their fixtures.
Their business fixture equipment.
Their
yes.
business fixtures, but
it's not real estate tax. Correct.
Okay.
You're correct. If I may, I don't mean to talk over. But I know Art, okay, and I know that he doesn't have wheels under that building, and I know that he doesn't have a license plate on it somewhere. So he doesn't pay motor vehicle tax on his building, but I pay motor vehicle tax on my trailer. He doesn't register his building with anybody, but I have to register my trailer with motor vehicles. So we contribute in a lot of different ways. Again, you need to sort of keep things in a certain perspective, because this is just information that I've sort of gathered together that I'm trying to make a point with, is that we're just a postage stamp. Okay, we're that size for a reason, because we know how to make that business work. Okay, now somebody who's got a conference room and has got fixtures for bar mitzvahs and you know,
Yeah, or a bar.
yeah,
All right, yeah.
there's a whole lot of other stuff that they have that they utilize to produce income, and is a service to the community. In that sense, it's a retail service to the community. Same with us. We just do it on a different scale.
So another question.
Yes, sir.
If your food truck's mobile, so like this $27.50 you may pay in Portland, if you also take your truck and have it in Middletown or Cromwell or some other town, you're paying property tax in multiple towns?
No, that would be illegal.
Okay.
We can only be assessed in one municipality.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a little bit of a dogfight to figure out who's going to come up with the bone. And so I'm saying right now, I have not been, aside from our little experiment, I've not been in business, service, out there hustling, if you will, recently, that for the present upcoming grand list, that I would be on anybody's list until I make a declaration. When I was in Middletown, I was assessed in Middletown.
Okay, so you're sort of shopping around for, maybe I'll set up shop in Portland, or could be Middletown. In other words, if you decide on Portland, this is where you are.
Right.
Right. You're not also in Middletown.
Okay, case in point, because I am talking to other towns about other things. So I could be, and this is one of the great things, this is when I say we know how to do what we do with our postage stamp. I could be in Portland, but I am a trailer. And in the evening, I could do late nights up at Wesleyan University, where we never had a problem with trash, I guarantee you that. But we could do late nights at Wesleyan University. I have talked to the economic development people in Middletown about the opportunity of locating on DeCoven Drive in the evenings, attracting highway traffic, because they also want to develop their riverfront, and they're looking for ways about attracting people to downtown. Well, my trailer on DeCoven Drive will attract people to stop in Middletown that otherwise wouldn't be stopping and wouldn't be going anywhere in Middletown. And I can offer that as an example to any municipality. It's sort of difficult where we're talking about in Portland, because we are under the highway. So it's trying to get their attention might not be the best idea.
So what I'm trying to understand, though, if you do that, like the Coven Drive and under the bridge in Middletown,
Mhm.
different times of the day or the week, then you're still only assessed property tax in
one town. I would file my declaration in Portland, because that is what I would conceive is my major portion where I would be. So if I went around daily and I went to a different town every day, I'd be really hard to catch up with. All right, but I'm kind of big, so I don't like to do that. But so in that sense, if I'm in Portland most of the time, and I do my declaration in do my declaration in Portland, and then I do some events in Middletown, and Middletown sends me an assessment, I can just send it back with a copy of my statement with the grand list with Portland, and it would be illegal for them to charge me this property tax. However, it would be perfectly legal for Portland to charge me this property tax.
And if I can interject, Rick, if you look back at the chart I gave you, that's what Enfield is trying to do, and they have that graduated system. So if you're a resident business of Enfield, like Joe lives in Portland, if he registers his truck to his home address, Portland gets the property taxes on his vehicle, as well as the personal property tax on his equipment. Enfield would give you a break because you're a local resident business, versus being somebody who's coming in from the outside and not paying the personal property tax or the vehicle tax there, and just paying basically like a user fee. So they raise the user fee for out-of-town trucks.
Got it. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
And they're trying to promote the food truck as a local business, rather than having them come from other communities for the busy time and then leave.
I'll springboard off of that and also add, because I don't think it's here directly, what we do is we're registered fully, the annual registration, the big ball of wax, in 3 different municipalities right now. Now, I intend on operating mostly in one. But then I look at a couple of other towns and I say, well, there's 5 concerts in that town during the summer, and then we traditionally do 4 school fundraisers in this other town. I know I'm going to be in those towns, and if I get their daily or their per event application, I'm going to be paying more than their annual fee. So I get the full annual fee wherever I go, so that anytime I'm going to do an event in any one of these towns, I've already got all that paperwork done. It's monstrous, because as a mobile food vendor, you don't run into this being a restaurant. In a mobile food business, you literally, every town is different. Every town has its own idea of health permits, and other than if, like Chatham Health District, if they're a health district. But so they have their health permits, they have their fire permits, they have their police permits, they have their zoning ordinance permits, their economic development permits. They've got all these, and you got to just keep shelling out if you want to do this, all right? Because there's no other alternative. But it's part of what we do to do business. And then on the other hand, if I can keep my efficiency rating the way it is and reduce my footprint as small as I can to be able to do what I'm doing, then I have just increased my ability to have a reasonable profit margin in spite of all of these expenses. That's why we do it. Right? So I think you could be right if you say, you have this little truck and you're not really licensed in this town, but you go there frequently, and you hit and miss and you do the weekends because nobody's looking. And I'm not that kind of food truck. And a lot of these food truck businesses that are out here today aren't that kind of operation, because there's so many things that you've got to dot the I and cross the T on. And if you're attentive to those sorts of things, such as I am, then it's easy. It makes sense. You just do it, and it's the cost of doing business. If a town wants, let's say a town wants $1,000 for the permit, and another town wants $400 for their permit, I'm going to look, as she was mentioning before, as Mary was mentioning before, is what are you offering? Why would I be there? What are the amenities that my food truck service can use or take advantage of that's in your municipality? Now, getting ahead of myself here, because I do want to go on to the other thing. For instance, New Haven and Hartford are 2 great examples. All right, skip to, let's just do that. Skip to the last page. Front side, yes, front side, last page. Hartford, population 120,000 plus, and these numbers are not necessarily the most. I just all Google, forgive me. Hartford 123.4, New Haven 129.5. Now they each have more than 5 major roadways that you can be located on or near, visually near to be seen for attracting traffic. All right, traffic, that's an arbitrary symbol of mine, means there's a whole lot of traffic in that town. All right, foot traffic, car traffic, lots of stoplights, lots of everything. All right, there's a whole lot of stuff that food trucks love. Locations under 1 permit. Now this is based on one annual permit, because they have different ways of permitting. So based on their 1 annual permit, in Hartford is $500. Now there's an additional $200 application fee, which makes that $700. Now if you want to be on Bushnell Park and you want to have one of those assigned positions that you can get on Bushnell Park, that's an additional $1,000 per 6 months. Okay? Now I don't see restaurants shelling out that kind of money because somebody in town's got a birthday. All right? So you've got to pick and choose. Right? Now, although Hartford might be a great place for me to be set up and do a whole lot of business, it's what I pick and choose. For just Sharon and I for right now, to have a good time, to be of service in our community, to not overextend ourselves. I've got plans for the future. I don't need to kill myself today. Right? So Portland, if you look, look, it's all the way down on the bottom of the list. Excuse me. I don't know what's the current population of Portland.
It's about right.
Yeah, 9,000. We did a Yukon at Rensselaer Field. We did a Yukon annual car show, alumni car show, that had, I believe, more than that number of people in attendance, and that was on one day. I had 13 people working at my trailer. All right, and we cooked. We did very well. But the thing is that that's what you look for. Is you look for, where can I put my trailer or truck that I can do the most business and achieve the most amount of money in the shortest period of time. All right, you got to keep in mind, you got to have satisfied customers. Can't poison anybody. You got to follow the rules. All right, but nonetheless, Portland, 9,500. Major roads. You got two, and for a little ways, they're both the same road. All right. This is me, less than a plus for traffic. Now, the reason I say less than a plus, I'm not being diminishing towards Portland. I'm saying the location. Where am I on Lower Main Street? 0 traffic, unless you're going into the animal control facility or the water pollution control facility or the medical marijuana plant. All right. You're not going past my trailer. All right. So all this traffic that you can talk about doesn't come to where I am down there. All right. So what would the possible fee be for no visibility and no traffic? All right. What do you have to offer? Now, I'm not being condescending here. I'm not I'm not trying to put you on a spot. I'm just saying is that when you think about, if you're trying to be agreeable to food truck business and you're trying to offer a space to be, what's that space worth to somebody? Now, I'll tell you why that space is worth something to me. There you go. You can pass that down. That's Pumper LaFrance and Foxy Aaron's. They're my mascots. All right. Pumper LaFrance is named after a 1962 American LaFrance pumper fire truck, of which I own one. And Foxy is named after the vintage Aaron's Fox fire apparatus. Beautiful, gorgeous, the kind of fire truck you want to take home to mom. Okay, so Pumper and Foxy, and if you read the little story on the back of the menu, I call them the first responders of the doldrums of everyday life and idle-wise hunger, bringing a smile to the face and warmth to the belly wherever they go. All right, now I don't want to go on and on and on, but Chuck E. Cheese uses a rodent, and they really don't have a story. Okay, so why would this spot, why would this no traffic, no visible spot located between the sewer plant and the pot plant, all right, with mixed odors, why would that be a benefit to me? Okay, I would submit that it's equally a benefit to me as it is to Portland. I'm willing to take a chance on that spot, knowing that over the last 7 years of being in business, that I have a reliable clientele that will follow me into the depths of anything, and believe me, that's that place. Right? But thank you very much. Be here all week. But the other thing is that I foresee that perhaps we can be of assistance to Portland in trying to determine what's the best fit for this new food truck, food trailer type of business. We're not, I'm speaking for the other businesses out there too, we're not what food trucks used to be. In New Haven, okay, Long Wharf, I'm sure you're all familiar with Long Wharf. Yeah. New Haven's fee for their permit, and again, because some people have the long end is on the health permit, some people have the long end is on the police background check, where you pay your money to how do you get your permit. All right, we had to pay double to have our fingerprints done at the public safety building because one of the towns that required fingerprints couldn't do them right. They require them, you got to have them, but they can't get it done. So we had to go get them elsewhere. But back to New Haven, so Long Wharf. So New Haven's permit is $200, and there's lots of different places that you can go in New Haven with that permit. But Long Wharf is different. It's under kind of like an association. Now, Long Wharf, you buy your spot for $2,500 for the year. The hours of operation are 8 in the morning to 10 at night. Right? I used to want to go down there and do the sublet and do overnights for truckers, but they changed the rules on that, so you can't do the overnights. They closed the place down at 10. They give, for $500 more, you can get 30 amp plug-in service. Okay, so you can just pull up, no generators, you just pull up and plug in. Other towns, other municipalities have in their parks, and they don't charge for the electricity or anything, but if you come and do an event, they have 100 amp, 50 amp, 30 amp access plug-ins for all types of vendors and concert people and stuff like that. So when you think about what you want to do, and you think about what you want to have, and if you think you may want to have food trucks, and you want good quality food trucks, think about what services the town can provide to make that happen. Right? Now I'm willing to do this on okay, so we want power, so I'll put in the power. Now that's going to cost me roughly $600-700. I'm willing, cost of doing business, I'm willing to do that, but I can't do that on a month permit. I can do that on an annual permit, and and I have references, that I don't leave trash behind, Let me just go on to one thing real quick, because I know this is laborious. On the back of page 1, competition, people talk about, food trucks taking away business from area restaurants. Ask your restaurateurs, all right? If they tell you that's true, ask them which food truck took their business. I don't think they'll be able to tell you, right? We don't. People that come, and this also goes into the idea of dining rooms and bathrooms and hand wash facilities. You don't want to overproduce this, okay? There are roughly 4 or 5, pulling in the next page, authorities. Sorry to make you jump to the next page, but there's the health department. They're the authority for all things healthfully, okay? Washing hands is a healthy thing, right? They require a separate hand wash sink as part of their inspection on your food trailer. We have that. Generally speaking, all food trucks have that. We know what the regulation is. We do that. Some of us have better facility than others, but we have that. Okay? We don't provide hand washing facilities for our customers because a family is going to take their children out to eat. They're probably going to make their children wash their hands before they leave the house. They're probably going to have hand wipes, right? But there is no jurisdiction for a food establishment to make sure the children's hands are washed. That's not in a restaurant. That's not in an ice cream shop. That's not in a deli. That's not in a food truck. The hand washing issue is about us. Are we doing proper by the Board of Health in how we manage our hygiene in our establishment? It's the same for a regular restaurant, right? It's no different, right? Our customers pull up. Generally, this is the way it'll work. We've got one guy, he's a town employee, by the way, and he has established a high ranking as a repeat customer in just this last month. He loves to drive his vehicle past the location and shout out the window, "The regular!" All right? He's my French toast customer, right? He drives by, he shouts out the regular, 15 minutes later he comes by, picks up his French toast and is gone. He's not looking for a place to use a bathroom, okay? People that order delivery from the Connecticut Pharmaceutical across the street, we get several large delivery orders for them. That's a whole nother story. But we go over there, we deliver the order. They don't come out of their building. They've got bathrooms. They know what to do, okay? The food truck industry, even if you're at a fair, if you're at a concert, such as down at the Brownstone Quorum Park there, right? They've got restrooms there. We don't, the health department does not require us to provide restroom facilities for the customers. Nobody else has jurisdiction over that. You can't tell me that, I'm not being argumentative, but I'm just saying is that it's like the tax issue. One party can't say, I have to have a bathroom, where the other party who's in charge of the bathroom question, because it's an environmental health issue, says I don't. Right? You've got to be careful on whose toes you step on, because if they're your own, that's on you. That's not my problem. Okay? Fire department. Bob Shea, we've been through this a lot, because I always check and double check. Measure twice, cut once. I measure 15 times, right? Because I'm so scared I'm going to make the wrong cut, right? So I make sure all my fire extinguishers are up to date. I make sure that I have everything, and I make a comment in here about meeting or beating the standards for any place in the country. All right, that's the way I set up for business. All right, if there's some agency that says that I have to have a green polka dot fire extinguisher, you better believe I'm going to have one. I might not need it in Portland, but I'm going to have one. Right? I have all the fire suppression system. I got everything. All right, because I may need it, because I may want to go work in a town that's going to ask for it. Portland might not ask for it, but I got it. Right? Screens on the windows. Chatham Health, that's one of their rules. All right. Watch the food trucks that you see. Do they have screens on their windows? We have screens on our windows. Right? But when you're taking somebody's order and when you're taking their money and when you're handing them their food, it's kind of difficult to hand it through the screen. So these things do have to open and close frequently. So the question becomes is, well, what about the flies? You know? So as long as they're not in the food, I guess everything's okay. But the minute somebody finds a fly in their food, then I got to start scrambling. I got to prove that my screen was down all the time. And if I took their money, it's hard for me to do that. But back to the fire department, the police department. If I have an issue, I call the police. Right? I had a customer who was irate about something once. I had to call the police on him. He was at a function in another town. I had to call the police. I said, this is going to be an issue. You got to take care of this. Those are the people. If you have people that are flagrant litterers, okay, or someone comes and angrily kicks over the garbage cans that we provide for our customers and makes a mess, that's beyond the health regulation that I provide a trash receptacle and I get rid of the trash as the business. I may make the arrangement with the property owner, as was mentioned, you may make them responsible. You don't need to make them responsible. The health department already makes me responsible. Okay, but I may go to the property owner and say, listen, I've got to leave the garbage with you. Is that okay? And yes, put it here. Put it in this garbage. No, I can't leave it on your curb or your step. I have to put it in a receptacle. So I'll work that out, right? But if trash is thrown, tomatoes are thrown at windows and everything, call the police. Those are the people. Public safety is who's involved now, right? You have an authority for that. Land use and zoning. All right, they're the authority for what you can and can't do in certain places. And Susan, as we've discussed with muster dogs down under the bridge, the benefit to me is that it's on town-owned property, which, as I understand, is exempt from the zoning regulations. It's not a bad thing. It's really a good thing. It makes our venture on our thing, on our little project, really simple. So now and then of course the town clerk, and if you want you can read the rest, but I want you to skip now to the last thing, which is the one that says food. It's like page 3, backside, food truck trailer court model. I would be pleased as punch if you thought that perhaps you'd like me to come back or expound on this more and come back and maybe talk further on issues. Okay, let's just talk about the location that Susan and I are dealing on at 5 Lower Main Street. Okay, if you were to have a food court, whether you have it there or if you had another place, I'm just talking about what would a food court look like, and let's talk about that space. You would want to have 4 to 6 concrete pad locations for what you would want to call resident food trucks. These would be people like me, where I might say, hey, 3 months of the year I'm going to Florida with my trailer, but the rest of the year I'm yours at that spot. Okay, and my taxes will all be done there. Actually, at that point, my taxes might be done in Florida, but but we would have an arrangement. So you would have 4 to 6 on, let's say, a half-acre parcel that could be nicely landscaped. You'd have 4 to 6 pads for a vehicle the size of mine. You'd provide electricity that could be metered. You'd put it in, it could be metered. You'd provide potable water, a source for potable water. You might even want, as they did in New Haven, some municipalities developed co-op commercial kitchens. So if you had a lot of food trucks in the area, they could actually go to this co-op commercial kitchen and prep out food quick and easily, more so than it might be to go back to the town you came from to use your base kitchen. right? You'd have an annual permit for these, electricity, potable water, refuse, place to get rid of trash and gray water. Now, about sewers and gray water and grease extractors and things like that. Mobile food vendors do not have to have grease extractors. What they do have to have is gray water retention tanks. And then they are required by the Board of Health to get rid of this gray water in a prescribed manner. So, for instance, mine is the agreement with the Water Pollution Control Facility right next door to where we currently are. So anytime that place is open, I can roar in and I can hang my hose out over the open grate and, in the back of the building, and I can eliminate my gray water right there at the waste control facility. It's not difficult to do. Most towns permit it. Some towns have charged, $10, dump fee. It's like having an RV and getting rid of your waste. Only we don't have that kind of waste. Ours is just what's considered kitchen gray water. Okay. And then wherever the facility is that we get rid of it has the onus of the grease extraction and everything else as would be provided. And Portland is adopting the fog things, the federal, all that. Yeah. So the Board of Health, they're the people that are in charge of us for that. If I go and I dump my gray water on your lawn, you've got somebody to go to. There's an authority to go to. So C, spaces available up to 10. You can have like 6 to 10 additional spaces that could be on the periphery or something, but that would be for smaller trucks and people that do pop-up food concession that would come for events. So if you had a big event near this food court thing, you would have a lot of vendors that would want to come to town for that. Yeah, they're going to get these ancillary positions. You'd have all your mainstays, your resident troopers would be there. And all of their, not only police troopers, I mean, and all your regular customers. So it benefits the food court, it benefits the town. Now, if community commercial kitchen, I mentioned that, and then similar models, yeah. So Long Wharf in New Haven is a similar model to that. Englishtown Flea Market, Englishtown, New Jersey, is a huge model for that. It's not in Connecticut, but some of the best things are not here yet. Brimfield Auctions in Brimfield, Massachusetts. They have a bunch of different auction fields that are set up. 3 times a year they have a week-long auction. 1 million people go through at a time, and each person that has a field of vendors also has water and electricity and everything to hook up, and permission to hook up said number, 2, 3, 4 food concessions. So if you want to have events in town, having food concessions near those events in town might be something you want to really strongly look at and endorse and prepare for. And then the very, very, very last thing, I can't think of. I know I must have gone over it. But, so, did I forget anything? Right. Yeah, we have the same liability insurance. So you want $1 million coverage? I got $1 million coverage, right? Now, does it cost me as much as a regular restaurant? I don't know the answer to that question. And I don't know that I would tell you even if I did know the answer to that question. But the thing is that I have it. Okay, and anywhere we go, we have to provide a declaration of insurance. Some towns insist that we have them actually named on a copy of our insurance policy that is provided to them. So we do what we have to do, and there is nothing. I'm going to tell you, if you've got restaurants in town, which we all know you do, all right, their expenses are higher than mine, but I have more things that I'm responsible for. All right, you don't go into a restaurant in town and find that, and this is not your town, but many towns now, you have to have your police background check. Is everybody works in every restaurant in Portland gone through a police background check? And I don't know what the cutoff is on if you're good or bad, naughty or nice, but everybody's got to go through that on a food truck. In many towns, we have to wear picture badges. We have to pay $20 to have our picture taken by their police department and then emblazoned on our chest. And so I don't see that in regular restaurants.
You've
right?
given us a lot of information that I wasn't,
It's only a
actually,
tip.
I wasn't aware of all of it, so that's very helpful. I want to know if there's any other questions that, it's a lot of good information, Joe. And Mary, thank you very much. I think we have, in light of the new information we have, I think we need to take a look at this. Some more. Jim, what do you?
I think there's a lot to digest and wade through.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
If you like, and Susan, you can get in touch with me. I'd be happy to, I just threw this together in a short period of time.
Sure.
It doesn't represent the highest or the lowest or the best. But if you'd like me to do some more in-depth research on it and get you more concrete current numbers, I'd be happy to do that.
What we'll do is our staff in the office will take a look at the information and I'll bring something back and send it out to the selectmen for their continued review, if that's agreeable with everyone. And we'll continue our dialogue. Thank you, very
Hope to.
interesting.
Well, now, Susan, that all comes back to you now, doesn't it? So we have to talk about that. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is appointments to boards and commissions, which I don't know that we have anything tonight. So we'll move on to refunds of excess payments. Jim?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we refund $70.70 to Beth Fortia, POA.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion that we refund $41.39 to John C. Traciola.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And finally, I'll make a motion that we refund $1,540.72 to Chelsea Groton Bank.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Status reports?
I will
Ralph?
pass on to everyone that the motion that was made at the last meeting, I passed on to
Thank
the
you.
the co-chairs of the park committee, and we did also pass the information on to the engineer and the contractor at a meeting today, so they're all aware of the
Great.
discussion.
Thank you. Anybody else? Informal discussion?
Need something else?
Well, I was just gonna add with the park, I think that they're gonna pour basically the foundations for the building should be poured. They had one of them dug out and the forms in place. What would be for basically the building that's gonna have the pump equipment and electrical and storage on that side of the concession stand. And it was dug out where the forms weren't in place with the bathrooms yet, but that's expected to get poured on Friday and then Monday. And by the end of next week, the foundation should be in the ground, so you're gonna start seeing the building construction go up as well. So they're moving along nicely. It's kind of
Yeah,
interesting. to see.
actually Lincoln was at our meeting today, so we had
Good.
some additional discussions about those types of issues with regards to what the town's looking for. The only other thing, since you're bringing up that, I would say that it's kind of interesting because they have all the cement footings for all of the splash pad components. So between the building foundation being laid out and the splash pad layout, now it's coming together where you could actually be there and get a sense of positioning. Because we always talk about this, and that area has been a often worked area where there's piles of dirt and stuff. So now you're getting a true sense in that area how it's all going to lay out. So it's kind of neat.
Thank you. Public comment? Informal discussion? I have nothing under follow-up, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Lou,
moved.
seconded by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. It's actually 9:09, Sharon.
Well,
All right, thank you very much, everybody.